Hello, I'm Sora Lexon, and this is Magic Lesson number 46, Wisely Wary. I haven't made a video in a few weeks, so allow me to address a persistent question from listeners recently. There's been this consistent inquiry, this consistent question about how I feel, either personally or from a more magical professional sort of perspective, about other popular occult YouTube channels, ebook writers, magical hosts, sometimes specific hosts are named. As we get closer to the winter solstice, why not do an entire lesson on brainwashing? It's such a lovely simpatico for this season of grace and gratitude. It actually is. There's something you'll only ever hear an occultist say. What better gift to give you, along with my energy and time, my respect for you and love, than the gift of an aptly timed lesson on the difference between cults and communities. I'm grateful for you, and here is my offering, my gift to you in response. The difference between those peer guides who add to our existence and those often charming despots who engender servile followers or followings. Some of these questions I've gotten, Facebook messages, emails, what have you, it just seems like a really good opportunity right now to get into this response to those people who might be somewhat confused about what they should and shouldn't trust. There are specific names I'm questioned about listed in these messages of actual specific hosts, for instance, of podcasts or YouTube video playlists. And I'm being asked to vouch for them or not, to weigh in on them, to say whether or not they're safe to listen to or know what they're talking about, or for me to offer advice on who is or isn't worth listening to. Because I'm not a cult leader, because I am an authentic occultist, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to weigh in on specific people. I will say, instead, that it never hurts to remember that cults are generally groups of like-minded thinkers that allow no room for disagreement. Right? You can be around a group of like-minded thinkers with good debate and discourse and healthy challenges. If you're in a group that doesn't allow for that, for any disagreement, for any personal identity, or challenging the authority of the leader or of the group's rules, that's likely a cult. So if you're listening to one of those sorts of channels, or are involved in one of those sorts of fandoms, or following one of those sorts of leaders, gurus, be mindful. It's usually not an inspired, balanced, or wise leader whose followers, for instance, attack and ridicule anyone who disagrees with their boss. Seek out information wherever you want, wherever you can. Find what resonates with you, but remain aware that sometimes what resonates with us as individuals is because of our own insecurities or weaknesses, those places where we have yet to grow and learn and evolve. And there are those who will happily lead you down a garden path of seemingly informed, friendly nonsense, which is actually rather egotistically judgmental tripe, because they know how and where to apply emotional pressures to those weaknesses, or to make the people listening to them feel like they like them, while also making them feel like they're smarter than them, or they have answers that the audience can't come to for themselves. In magic, whether you're a solo or group practitioner, gurus are not to be followed. No authentic, true occultist that I have ever met who's worth their salt is ever going to say something along the lines of, you have to follow this one teaching, this one method, this one leader, this one mentor. That never happens in real occultism. That isn't real magic. There are no gurus in authentic occulted practices. We are all students who have the great honor and privilege of constantly learning from one another. Becoming an initiate of the mysteries, that's one of the first steps. We are all children in the greater way, in the greater path. We are all students. We ought all respect each other and learn from each other. I learn while doing this channel just from those questions and messages that are sent to me by listeners. I have to sit with them, process them, ask questions of myself. I'm not going to answer whether or not I like so-and-so that's been asked about in this email. I'm not going to answer that. But that also made me feel a little weird, a little gross that someone would ask me that. Why? Then I have to sit and confront the fact that it's because I would hope none of my listeners would need to ask that sort of question from me. That they, after 46 lessons, are hopefully coming to a better understanding of how they can make those judgments for themselves. And then I have to think about, well, how am I going to present that in a healthy way? If someone were going to talk to me about the difference between cults and communities, how would I want them to do that in a healthy way? In a way that felt like it left room for me to form my own identity, opinion, or judgments around it without being judgmental. So just by asking me this question that I'm getting in emails, I am that questioner's student. It progresses me, it evolves me, it helps me. So I'm not their teacher, they're teaching me. That's how it's supposed to be. So anyone who's walking around saying that they, and only they, have the ear of God or Satan, I've said stuff like this before, whether it's someone claiming that ancestral guardians or ascended masters talk to them, right? They and only they are in correspondence with Metatron. Anyone who says that they have all the answers, that is not willing to stand in front of everyone that they're talking to and say that they're not always right, that they're still in a process of evolution, that they don't have all the answers, but that they're seeking to progress as everyone progresses around them and with them. It's not a good person who's behaving that way. If someone's not willing to say that, then they're likely not actually in contact with those things they're claiming they're in contact with. People who have real connections like those available to them from a higher plane, however you want to think about it, they don't apply a cover charge to their sacred labor. They don't need to scream about it from the hilltops, and they don't struggle to find ways to thrive in their true purpose. And they never feel threatened by admitting that they're ever learning and changing as well. Anyone who behaves as if they should not and cannot be open to being challenged or questioned, that they never need to evolve or change their minds about anything, be very wary. You shouldn't have to agree with absolutely everything someone else thinks or believes about anything, ever. And they shouldn't want you to if they are healthy and want you to also be healthy. They should be open to discourse, argumentation, debate, their own growth and evolution, open to learning from you as well. The best places to learn are usually those places in which the speaker or host or leader is more than happy to take a knee and listen, right? Or to genuinely, authentically say, I'm not here to teach you. What can I learn from you? Talk to me. You're the teacher. Question everything. Question what I say. Go listen to other people. Question them as well. Seek knowledge from many sources. I cannot and will not bear the egoic, dominating, clip-all role of always being a teacher and never the student. We are all of us students. If someone's talking like that, if you're surrounded by people in a group dynamic who behave that way, it's probably a healthy, okay place for you to be, both physically and mentally and spiritually, right? But you really do have to be careful of people who do the opposite as you progress in your own magical path. Because some of these leaders are very alluring and not in obvious ways. Some of them claim to be victims, which makes you want to like them. Some of them behave in such a way, the persona they're pushing forward or putting into the public optic, sometimes they act a little dumb because it makes them more amicable, or it makes them more approachable, or it makes them seem more real to act or talk a little slow or stupid. And that sometimes is actually being done on purpose, because it can be attractive in the same way a victim can be attractive. You feel safe around it. So some of these charismatic leaders aren't necessarily beautiful or massively charming. Some of them use other subtle influences to create the same effect and are still, because of that, very, very alluring. It is easy to get swept in and swept away by any powerful hive mind type of aggregate energy, pool of energy, or groupthink. And it can be very difficult to have the humility to question ourselves, to look in a mirror and wonder if maybe we are a little too caught up in whatever we're learning, or whatever one fandom we're a part of, whatever one leader or speaker or podcaster we're listening to. So caught up that we now know ourselves to be right and refuse to question it. Such is the way of simple, comforting ignorance. Such is the way of many religions. It can feel very comforting, very seductive, to where we, the individual, may not realize we are being seduced by those leaders or teachings that simply prey on our needs and reinforce beliefs or values we already had in place, like needing them because we weren't good enough or smart enough. Now, this isn't always true. Sometimes we find a group or dynamic or someone who offers information freely, who makes us feel good, who resonates with us, because they are in fact genuine, and our intuition, our feelings about it are good because they're authentic, that they're not trying to gain power over us in any way. There's nothing wrong with feeling and being comfortable and trusting among your trusted fellow witches, freighters. Nothing wrong with relying on the structure you've chosen that's already around you, if it is in operation healthy and supportive of both you and the whole, not just of itself. It takes a very strong mind, a very strong personality type and identity type, a very strong cognition, mental state, to already be involved in something, have your faith, your belief in it, and be able to question it, because that can be very scary. It can be very scary to step back from something, question it, and have to look at yourself with real fear and humility and wonder if it was never true to begin with and you were just duped. That is one of the hardest things to confront. So people who can do that, who take the risk, because you can feel it can be cognitively shattering. You can feel that now you might be insane. Like, what can be believed? Nothing can be believed, right? The structure of your reality can shift. It takes an incredibly strong person to be able to do that. So sometimes when we're caught up in something, we don't even know, it doesn't even occur to us that we do need to look into a mirror. It takes an incredibly strong person to be able to do that. So I'm advising that the way you can tell the difference, right, if you're in a community or a cult, is that it should never be a problem for you to step back and ask yourself if it's a healthy environment or group, whether it's an online collective, fandom, actual commune that you've traveled to spend time in spiritually, whatever this is, this group dynamic that you might be a part of, or this one spiritual podcast host or occult magic YouTube video maker like me, you should be able to step back and question it. Because if it is useful, wise, serves its members well, or if they do, if we're talking about one voice of some kind, one leader, one speaker, one teacher, it should and must welcome such constant testing, constant inquiry, constant challenges from the ground, the base of its structure. A community doesn't feel threatened, insecure, or challenged by a member stepping back and asking questions of it and taking a really good hard look at it. A cult hates when a member does that. That is how you can tell the difference. Shorthand. Sometimes it's not that easy, but it's one of those really big warning signs that if you're not allowed to step back and start asking some questions, there's probably a very real problem there. Also, if you're ever made in any way to feel as if you can't or shouldn't be doing that, preemptively being conditioned or taught that to ask questions means there's something wrong with you, there's a real problem there. Any leader who makes you feel like questioning them is a shameful act on your part or somehow makes you stupid, they're preying on you. A great way to check for this sort of thing, if you're already caught up in it, or maybe double guessing yourself or having trouble gaining clear perspective, is to look and see if other members or followers or fans or whatever, like yourself, attack people who disagree with them, needing to aggressively protect their leader, their guru, or being highly emotionally reactive to anyone who isn't a part of the group or who challenges it. Behaving that way speaks of massive insecurity within the structure. A real leader doesn't need to be protected by their followers. That's a huge weakness. Real power doesn't require lemmings to shield it, nor does it encourage that its followers or that its proponents, if it's a religion, that the people who follow it, its believers, it does not require that they need insecurely to force teachings on others, prove themselves, or tear down others who make inquiries or are engaged in a different belief system. Real strength, power, balance, it doesn't need to sell itself, and it doesn't need to be at war with everything that isn't it. Real power invites questions, appreciates differences. It has no problem calmly agreeing to disagree with anyone or saying nothing at all because it doesn't need to. It knows itself. Anything that's thriving on high emotional reactions, and I'm saying reaction, so I'm not talking about the high emotional states that we engender within ourselves during, say, a ritual practice or ceremony. I'm talking about reactive emotions that you aren't directly in control of or employing for your own purposes. Anything that thrives on that or seeks to instill that, be wary, be wise. Such is the way of every harmful cult. If you're in a group of some kind, in person or online, whose followers or fans react emotionally, verbally, violently, hatefully against outsiders, or claim that they're the victims if anyone questions them, even if the outsiders asking questions are actually awful or insulting or horrible themselves, right? If the reaction is a high emotional state of some kind, then that is what's being taught by the leader or being taught into the value system or into that membership group. What's being taught is imbalance, violence, a hate, self-martyrdom, victimization roles. No matter how wrapped up in pretty stories or, tales of angels or empathic knowledge something might be, if that's going on, if you can see that in a live stream somewhere in comments, that is how those followers behave, and they're behaving that way for a reason. Also, just as a general sort of warning, be wary of anyone who engages in the infomercial, that is, in using magical teachings in an addictive way in order to sell you a bigger package later. Some people will offer you some information up front, right? But they keep back the whole, or they get you listening or hooked on it. And then later, it's this secret or hidden information that you have to pay for, or it's the subscription to this better super thing that you now have to pay for. Think about it like this. If someone like that were good at energetic resource manifestation themselves, would they need to use the one most important and sacred thing in their life to make money off of it? And would they seek to be making money off their own students? Probably not. They could probably find or make other valuable commodities, make use of other skill sets, other talents that they have to earn easily, possibly even passively. I do. They likely wouldn't need to desecrate and corrupt their magical life and world and teachings that they're claiming to help others with by charging for them. If they indeed had functional magic for themselves, all of their lessons would be free as a service to their fellow man. Or at the very least, virtual lessons such as YouTube broadcasts, ebooks, subscriptions to monthly details. If a room doesn't need to be rented for you to sit in and hear these things, why are you being asked to pay a ticket price? That's a fair question to ask. Lodges, temples, gather covens, ancient mystery schools, left-hand churches, right-hand churches, the good and valid ones anyway, they charge a pittance for membership. That membership is to pay for useful materials, rented or purchased spaces in which to meet and work the craft within or build a community within, ritual tools, upkeep, ceremonial garb, maybe to help others be able to attend. Sometimes there's a fund for that sort of thing. Those are the sort of memberships that I would say it makes sense to pay for, where everyone's paying in to serve a larger communal aggregate in a fair and equal way. Some ancient mystery schools online ask for a pittance so that they can ship you physical materials that have to be paid for, or so that they can offer you someone who really is on call as a tutor as you're working your way through some sort of magical training program. And you have to look and you have to be careful, right? You have to be circumspect. But if something like that seems equitable, seems fair and right, I would say that's the sort of thing to pay and be a part of. Now, if they're charging some exorbitant fee, then obviously that's not what's really going on. If you feel, just personally, if you feel impelled to proceed into a group dynamic of some sort, again, be wise, be wary, look hard at it. But there are good memberships, and that is the type of membership I would advise paying for, which is serving you as it serves itself. And you can look to see if it's doing that instead of just profiting from you. Good, experienced, wonderful occult knowledge, the best occult knowledge, is also out there available for free if you don't want to be part of a group. I personally, just in my daily life, I choose not to pay for things that I can have for free. So I'm not going to advocate that others do so. I do, on the other hand, pay into systems or communities that I find highly worthy, right? If there's some 1,000-page amazing expose on a Solomonic ritual application that's been translated out of Hebrew from its original manuscript form, and now it's a 99-cent ebook single time purchase, and I'm interested in that, then yeah, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to use it. But you have to use common sense, right? Most virtual subscriptions are just ways to charge you for things that someone else has found for free and repackaged. And usually they're not half as good as the original you can find for free. A big red flag you can notice with this sort of teacher or guru or mentor, because they love to give themselves these names, these very patriarchal, authoritarian figure names, because they know there are people out there looking for that type of connection. Luke the Jedi to his student, right? You want that father figure to teach you how to do it right. There are people who will prey on that. And a way to find them is to notice how their free, quote-unquote, content is only free at the beginning. You'll see that in some things that claim to be religions as well. Or that their, quote-unquote, free content starts to slip away to be replaced with now what you have to pay to have, or with empty commercial content. infomercials endlessly as they really begin to fall prey to their lesser sephra, coming close to a klippah, a very base greed. It can be very powerful. Even people with the best intentions can get caught in it and pulled down by it. And you can notice that they'll become both lazy about retaining their audience usefully or helping them, while also focusing with more constant and pernicious lust on the selling of their supposed goods, and usually they're virtual goods. Again, use common sense. If something starts to feel gross about someone you're reading, a group that you're listening to or with, a YouTube video like mine that you're watching, or a podcast that you're listening to, there's probably a reason for that. Even if you can't put your finger on it yet, there's probably a reason you feel a little icky about it. You're having that intuition. So, like any good magician, take the time to wisely step back and look at it, confront it, think about it, see the picture as a whole, and find out for yourself why you're questioning the validity or authenticity of something or someone in the first place. If they are authentic, they're not going to mind being questioned in that way, and you're going to find out that you're feeling that way. Maybe you're being paranoid, and it is just fine. But it's not a community structure, or a healthy peer is not going to be bothered by you doing that, right? A cult will be. A false guru will be very bothered by that. Occult intuition and revelation isn't always necessary as well. Sometimes relying on good standard common sense is what you need, and we can get caught up in the spiritual to where we forget to do that. So if people are trying to sell you things that leave you feeling disappointed or craving to fill some void with more, that's probably exactly what they're intending to do. Create that feeling to sell you things. Anything that's staged with confirmation bias is likely a rigged game. Anyone that spends time within their content discussing ad nauseum how much good they do for others, they're probably spending more time discussing it than actually doing it. You know that because you're listening to it. These things aren't always obvious. People who invest time and intention, very real intentional energy, and social engineering their content to gain and hold and drain an audience are usually quite good at just that. It's very easy to fall into. They also can actually be very charismatic or personable, and not always in very obvious ways. At least half the people claiming to help or deprogram you are in fact programming you to buy stuff for them or from them. Stuff you can usually get for free because they're just that lazy. It's always along the lines of, I'll sell you magic words, or pay $50 to come to my spiritual session or magic lesson, or I'll sell you this virtual ritual, this method of candle spell, right? Those are all systems you can build for yourself or find for free. And that isn't Luke's magic occultism. That's a show game. Real magic requires real work on your part. Your energy, your intention is what allows for it. It takes actual labor and belief and an ongoing practice within yourself. You're not going to be able to buy it from someone. No one can supercharge your magic other than you. So anyone that's doing that, that's a show game. And it's also the opposite of spiritual authenticity, because if it was that easy, and if this is such a simple method that they've come into or created that you can apply, why aren't they giving it to you for free? They give you other things for free. Why do you suddenly have to pay for this one? I don't charge to talk to you about magic. I don't need to. My content isn't full of ads telling you to buy stuff from me or anyone else. It doesn't have to be. I have actual magic. I have actual resources. I do have an online shop. I actually have more than one, and a handful of other businesses and books that I've written that have nothing to do with magic that I'll never mention on this channel, because I don't need to promote book sales here or my other businesses here, right? But I do have an online shop and actual occult shop. That's why it's connected to this channel. So if you'd like to buy a candle or some incense, feel free to do so. But you do so with the complete knowledge from me that you don't need my incense. You don't need my products or anyone else's in order to do magic. All of the real power of magic lies within you. Now, that isn't to say products like mine, actual physical products, can't be helpful or simply a pleasant addition to someone's practice or ceremony, especially when you're starting out with approaching your craft early. And depending on how your own practice is, how you approach it, you might find things like a candle incredibly useful. You also might not, or you might prefer someone else's candles or something else. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's also something to be said for whenever someone's generating an actual physical, tangible product out of material, which costs money, right? Which are what then people are being charged for in a shop like mine that's connected to this channel, and not at some obscene profit margin. That's balanced. That's an actual business that isn't seeking to get something for nothing. I don't feel insecure about my shop or my products because I do well with or without that one business, with or without that one skill set, with or without people from this channel buying stuff from it. I have many skills, many talents. I apply them in many different ways. And every day Magick opens me up to more of my potentials. So I don't need to self-promote constantly or to take advantage of people. So if you're trying to figure out if something you're listening to isn't great, feel free to maybe compare it to my channel and see if it behaves the way mine does. No one with actual energetic influence needs to take advantage of others. They just don't. No one with actual magic needs to bother with the nonsense of earning resources through some lazy shell game or by lying or by taking it from others. It just isn't necessary when you actually have experience in occulted knowledges and their applications, when you have the genuine abilities that magic reveals to you for yourself. Things really do become very harmonious, very simple. Resources on massive scales become available without needing ever to lie or convince or cajole or to take it from others. And if you don't personally, say, choose to buy from one of my stores or buy a book of mine, right? I'm not going to mind. I'm not offended at all. Not only is it not my only revenue source, but it's going to do well because it's a good product or not. So I don't feel the need to push it on people or get them addicted to it or to the idea of my product or ideas being the one and only way of progressing, right? They aren't. It isn't. Anyone who's saying that, you should be very wary of that. You do not need me or what I'm saying. You do not need this YouTube channel in order to progress, in order to evolve, in order to find knowledge, wonderful knowledge, which serves you and becomes the best possible means by which you can become the best possible version of yourself. If anything, that's going to require seeking out and investigating many different sources. If I can help with any of that in some way, as others have helped me, cool. It's an honor, a privilege to serve. And I'll do it for free by making these podcasts available for free, the way any real occultist would. Right? Real occultists throughout time have never had a problem devoting their lives to seeking out knowledge and truths, and continuing that questioning, that journey, that search, while also inspiring it in others and protecting it at all costs, and doing so for free as an honor and a privilege, completely apart from their regular work, their regular day job, their regular means to earn money. So you can sit with that idea. If you're ever questioning something, right? That's something you can think about. If they have so much experience as a spiritualist, as an occultist, if they're claiming such authority, why can't they do it for free? Why on earth would they need to charge for it? Why would they corrupt themselves or their practice by doing so? I'm also very happy to remind everyone that in the end, only we are responsible for who we are. I'm thrilled to constantly be advising that everyone is only responsible for themselves. You are responsible for you. I'm not going to tell you who you should or shouldn't listen to. That's your job. That's your journey to figure that out. And what a beautiful journey it is. I'm also going to say, look into other systems of belief. If you're guarding your mind, protecting your mind, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to be completely surrounded by the membership of an actual cult and still learn things from them without ever being caught up in that group dynamic, without ever falling prey to that hive mind. It's probably not going to be you learning the things they're trying to teach you. You're going to be learning lessons about how a cult functions, right? But there's always something to be learned. And if you're guarding your mind, you won't feel threatened by that sort of an environment. You just won't. And you should always be questioning people, right? I might not always agree with you. You might not always agree with something I'm saying on my channel. And that's okay. That's a good thing. You should be doing that. There's a difference between being judgmental and making a judgment call. If you want to disagree with me about something, that's fine. A good offense is the best defense, right? An experienced occultist guarding their mind willfully does so by strengthening identity and cognition, not by never judging who's teaching them because they're taught not to be judgmental. See how that little sidestep works? That's very manipulative. If someone's saying that you shouldn't be judgmental, which no, you shouldn't be, but there's a context for that. But if someone's saying you shouldn't be judgmental, but then turns around and makes the judgment call of how you should, though, buy their products because that would be a good judgment on your part. You see how that's a little strange? Or you should never be judgmental of the whole, right? You should never be judgmental of the group. That makes you a bad person. See, there's shaming involved there. And that's not okay. There's something very wrong with someone who's behaving in that way. When I speak to being non-judgmental, when any authentic occultist speaks to not needing to judge others, that isn't what we're talking about. We're not talking about don't make healthy, good judgment calls for yourself. You have to be able to do that. You should also be able to be open to new, differing, or dissenting opinions without feeling threatened by them. We use the tools we're given for ourselves, right? We don't need to rely on someone else to do the work for us because we are capable in and of ourselves. That, if nothing else, is the mark of a true adept. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go around being hyper paranoid and concerned that every person or activity or fandom or group that you come into contact with is likely going to convert you into drinking the spiritual or actual Kool-Aid. They might be, but it shouldn't and doesn't need to bother you. Being able to listen and engage with others and hear them out without needing to buy into everything they're saying, hook, line, and sinker, without needing to protect them from themselves if they're presenting themselves as a victim and help them, or needing to react and disagree with them, right? That's part of being a trained initiate of the mysteries, that you don't have to function in any of those ways just in order to listen to someone else. Every source, every material, every interaction is a possible source of insight and information, usually in a very less than obvious way. But everything, good or bad, offers us an experience, offers us a lesson. And for that, the occultist is ever grateful, ever awed. But that also doesn't mean that every pretty stone that catches your eye is a diamond lying on the ground and that you should fall for that. Or that every person who walks up to you and says hello with what feels like a very nice smile ought to become your next Messiah. You are your guide. You are your best guide, not me. So I'm not going to tell you who you should or shouldn't listen to. I'm not going to tell you who is or isn't worth listening to, is authentic or not. That's for you to figure out. That's your journey. You are your best guide. Be a wise and wary guide. Until next time.